Next up on No Surprises.
The backstory is that Kelsey's son has a toy that sings a song. It's a dump truck, and it sings a song, and it goes, "I'm a powerful dump truck." I always mess up the second
Taking
line.
my load from here
to there. And it's so funny because I'm like, we are all powerful dump trucks taking our load from here to there. Hi, I'm Mallory Lazick.
And I'm Kelsey Gilbert-Carling.
And this is No Surprises, a look inside the ambitious, joyful, and occasionally terrifying journey of running a web design agency.
It's true.
In
That's
fun
us.
sweaters.
I like your sweater, Mal.
Thank you.
Where'd
Sweater
you get-
appreciation. Sweater appreciation. eBay.
Do we think this is handmade? Do we think someone made this for someone with their hands?
Well, I would hope so, although this is a small known crochet driven designer. So,
Okay.
I mean, I could lie to you and say, yes, someone made this for me. Was it you? Was it me?
It was me. I did
Was
it.
it my secret admirer? We'll see.
Yes.
Tune in next week. Got people crocheting for me.
Yeah, love it. Rena, you're here.
I'm here.
You keep
It's really
coming
lovely to
back.
be
You know what? We haven't driven you away yet.
No, not yet.
No.
I'm happy to
still
be
time.
here. There's still time. Today is young.
Today is young.
See, your assistant is here soaking up
My
the sun.
assistant. Yeah, my assistant is here soaking up the partly sunny day here in cold Chicago.
I appreciate that you can see Daisy on half the screen and then you occupy the other half. Like you give her the space
Yeah.
that she deserves because she is a star.
Give her
She
flowers.
Yeah. This is like a full-on partnership here.
Mhm.
She carries all of my emotional baggage.
Yes,
It's like really
yeah.
strenuous, and
Does she have a little
Her and
vest
Dexter
to
should
tuck
be
it?
in little therapy sessions together. We're like,
Exactly.
our parent. Again, with the face of being like absolutely nonplussed.
Right.
What are you doing with me? Well, here we are.
I'm super
Sure.
excited to be here again. We're
Yeah.
talking a little bit about openness today.
We are.
And
And I love this topic.
it's a great topic. There are so many different directions this kind of topic can go.
Mm-hmm.
We're
Well, I
going to
think
talk
it's
about
interesting. Sorry, but I
No,
think
go
it's
ahead.
interesting because the first episodes that we've been working through are a larger product of this positioning workshop we did in 2022. And when we came up with the word openness, it didn't really like flow off the tongue, but it was more so this all-encompassing umbrella term that took into account authenticity, vulnerability, all of those types of things where we're like, but we're each one of these things. We're inclusivity we aspire to. And openness just seems like this really wonderful, all-encompassing term.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And it's really clear that both you and Kelsey have built this business together really as a reflection of your own personal values, which is an extremely vulnerable position to put yourselves in. And it makes it so that when you're open with your community, with your clients, with the contractors that work within the Week of the Website ecosystem, they have to get to know you in a way that is sometimes can be just a little bit ick. Not ick in terms of but oh.
It feels like ick when you're talking about yourself, but also you're opening yourself up in the spirit of openness. Like you open when you're vulnerable, when you show up really as authentically as possible, you open yourself up for a hell of a lot of critique, specifically in a way that's really pointed, right? Because especially for this one where we've talked about how our values are really personal to us, like this is personal. And so opening up that box and being like, all right, I'm letting you see part of, as Kelsey and I will always like to say, like how the sausage is made. It is like, it's a really raw experience, and you have to be able to withstand, feedback, and feedback that's both constructive and feedback that also you have to learn to be like, I'm going to leave that. That's not for me. And so it's a really scary place, but with that sort of fear, if you can conquer it, you get so much more out of it. And
I feel like you and I both kind of want to just cut things off at the pass as much as we can. Like really good, like example, our pricing is just listed on the website. Like,
yeah.
And that is because Mal and I really both are not a huge fan of that conversation where it's like, what's your budget? Well, what's your budget? What do you have? How much money do you have? And it's like, listen, everybody's going to come to the table with a budget, whether they know it or not. There's a number that's going to make them feel uncomfortable. And I would rather have them know at least where we're going to be coming from and be able to make a decision based on that openness than having us talk people into something that maybe doesn't feel comfortable. Does that mean that maybe we leave money on the table for people who have a higher budget? Sure.
Right.
Like
how many times have we heard that in conversations with mentors where it's like, well, you should be upselling. And listen, as someone who comes from like a background in sales, like I get it. I get the game. I don't love playing the game. I can play the game, but there's a reason why we put our pricing up. And it's not just because, oh, look at us, we're being so vulnerable with listing our pricing on the website. It cuts through the bullshit. It allows you to get through like, hey, listen, this is how much it costs to work with us. We went through the trouble of productizing the service and putting up this pricing so that we could basically attend everything at the same level. You get so much further, so much quicker. You eliminate a lot of your sales cycle, and you weed out the people who may not be the best fit for you. And listen, there's plenty of people out there who can build websites for you at all different sorts of prices. This is just the way we do it, and it helps us get around any of those negotiation conversations that honestly, if I'm being frank, I just don't have the patience for. Like, I've done it enough in my life to just be like, you know what, I wish I didn't have to do anymore? That.
Yeah, I just read this really, not just, a couple weeks ago, I sent Mallory this blog post that I came across. And it was about ethical marketing and how, the new approach to ethical marketing is this idea that you merely present information to the client, you let them know about the service that you're offering, how much it costs, and you let them make the choice. And I just had to laugh because I was like, that should not be a style of marketing. Like, that is just how you should do business. And they were like, we trust our clients to be able to make the decisions about what's best for them rather than trying to talk them into it. And I think that that's always been the core of how we approach things when it comes to pricing and when it comes to transparency. Like when we onboard developers or when we go to hire developers or project managers, when we list a job description, we put exactly what we pay per project on that listing. So right out the gate, like I know if the person who's talking to me has accepted the premise of what we can offer them, because what we can offer them is guided by like real tangible things, right? Margins, costs, fees that we have to pay, like how much we charge for websites is a function of how much we, the value of what we think we deserve for our work, plus the value that we think that we need to pay our contractors, in the market as a whole. So it's like, it's our job to be as open and transparent about the factors that we can determine as possible. And then I trust that the PMs, that our developers, and that our clients are going to make the choices that are right for them. You know, we try really, really hard to kind of continually address our pricing so that it is meeting all of those goals while also adapting so that we can pay our team appropriately. And also, like, we know that they will come to us, and we trust that they will come to us if there's something that we need to talk about with regards to, I worked harder on this project, I did more hourly work, like whatever. And I think that that's just, it's funny because Mal and I both came from these environments where there wasn't a lot of transparency, there wasn't a lot of openness around things like cost and compensation and pay, and
No trust.
that's something that was really important to us. And yeah, exactly, it builds trust, but like openness in that area is so vital when it comes to just like the foundation of all of this.
Right. It always goes back to like, are you on the same team or are you pitting people against each other?
Exactly.
Sure, that's a wildly polarizing way to see this, and I know plenty of people who disagree with me, for a variety of reasons. And it just think, yeah, I'm trying to work and live in this economy. I am trying to feel good about things at the end of the day, and while you can turn it into a fun game or a back and forth, like that's just not where we choose to spend our time, and that's okay. Like, different
Well, I
strokes for
also
different folks.
I also think it like preps people for our process for working together, which is then by extension quite open. Like we
Yeah.
build pretty publicly, like we don't have a lot of time to like ferret things away and then like reveal them dramatically. So it's like, if I can't be transparent with you, if I can't be open with you from the beginning as we're establishing this relationship together, then the rest of this process isn't going to work, because it is truly dependent on us all being able to just like lay our cards on the table and work really well together.
Right. There's definitely something to be said about, laying it all out on the line, because then you are trusting your client and the people you're working with to make the best choice for themselves, and that puts skin in the game in their arena. And then everyone's opted in, right? No one feels like they got backed into a corner, and things just move a little bit easier. And isn't that funny?
Yeah. Raina, I feel like since you've joined the Week of the Website team, like, to us, this is just how we have always done things. So it's very like, the David Foster Wallace, like, this is water.
Water's wet.
Yeah, water wet, sky blue. Like, do you feel like the way that we have approached things is different than what you've experienced with other agencies before? Or is like, do we think that
well, no pressure. Hot seat.
Yeah, 100%. I've worked with several agencies as a contractor, and I've never experienced this level of transparency and openness, in particular around pricing. I think that's one way that it's iterated and that people can see it.
Yeah.
We talked a little bit about that kind of transparency level with clients. We talked a little bit about how transparency and authenticity is like built into the process that you've created itself, because it is such a condensed timeline, and how that allows like your team to be more authentic. I think so many businesses and so many agencies don't start with a process. Every process is sort of built as around the client needs. And that feels like, first of all, there's always like a lot of work and education that has to happen. But there's also a lot of reinventing the wheel that has to happen. And it just like that reinventing of the wheel, it can't be transparent, because there's like new people in the mix, and like they have a different sense of like what the history is. And there's just like no opportunity to be as transparent. So for me, the like transparency and authenticity as it relates to openness is really born out of the process that you've created. You can't really afford to work within this process, within these parameters, and not just be really straight to the point. Like no one really has time within the 5-day cycle to be beating around the bush.
Yeah.
Like, tell us what
Yeah.
you want, here's, follow this process and you'll get a result that is dynamic and, is really working.
Yeah. I sometimes get questions on sales calls when people be like, so what happens if we get to Thursday and I don't like it, or launch day? And I just am like, how can I express to you that if that happens, it's like 100 things will have had to have gone wrong, because there's so many opportunities for us to like sit face to face and look at the product and talk about it, that from the moment that we give you the URL, like you have the opportunity to look and leave notes and say how you feel. And I think it's sometimes so hard for people to wrap their heads around, because it's just like,
Right.
what if I don't like it? It's like, well, if you don't like it on Tuesday when we send you the link, then you can put some notes in the doc and then we talk about it and then we'll change it. You know what I mean? Like it's, and also we will have done a ton of homework and had conversation and prep with you to get to that point, so that already feels like a continuation of these conversations we've already had, where we understand your perspective.
Right. It's taking into account this like traditional way of doing things where people think that they're just going to be presented with something and they have to accept it and maybe tweak it from there. But our entire process is based on recalibration, or just calibration in general. So there are so many opportunities for signing off on design choices, even every day, that we present them in a really digestible way. We do it one bite at a time, right? Little by little, we are stair-stepping our way through to an end goal. If you're going to say that you're like, what happens if I get to Thursday and I don't like it? That's also saying that you weren't being intentional with the process all along. You weren't signing off on it. You just let us run wild and assume that we didn't listen to anything, which is not the case, because the way we build is very much in tune with what the clients want. We present the ideas, we give ideas, but we also extrapolate them from the client so that we can put those out digitally. And that's why it's like, I've heard that question too before, and I'm just like, I mean, it doesn't happen. And they're like, I find that hard to believe. And it's like, well, we've done it a lot of times. And it just so happens that this is what happens. And you know what, in the grand scheme of things, of course, like there have been a couple of Thursdays where people are like, I'm not pleased. But sometimes that's just a moment of, okay, we have to go back to the drawing board because maybe you're not ready to make a choice on this. And that's totally okay. Like we get it. Things get rushed and maybe you have to adjust. But again, like recalibration is all we do every single day. That's how we get the job done.
Yeah, I mean, and that creates this kind of loop of feedback, and criticism. Feedback is a gift, especially when it's really constructive. Do you talk to your PMs and devs about receiving feedback, or do you coach clients on how to give feedback? How does that work in the process?
Yeah, I think one of the most important things that we tell clients from the beginning on our first kickoff call is how important it is for them to communicate their feelings openly with us. Each of our PMs and devs has a little like opening statement that they share. And, you know, for the devs, a really crucial part of that is to say, the only feedback that is considered bad in this scenario is none. Like, we would rather hear from you that something's not working or that you don't like it than have you just say yes because you want to keep things moving smoothly. Like, we have the gift of doing this a lot. And so I think that our developers, their ego in the project is not so much tied to the execution of their ideas, but more, are they able to help the client synthesize what they need into something really awesome? And they can't do that if they don't get feedback from the client. So right off the bat, it's very important that we express that to them in that call. Like, we want you to tell us what you like and don't like, so that we can keep doing more or less of it. And then the other thing is we try to be very, very open with them about, there are technical limitations. Squarespace doesn't do everything, or it doesn't do everything well, or it doesn't do everything in a way that meets your higher objectives for the project. We want you to ask us about those things. We want you to ask for those kinds of features, but we also need you to trust that we're not here to just say no. We're here to guide you to the best, like most effective website for your stated objectives. And I think that openness at the beginning of saying, we want your feedback, we want to hear your ideas, we also want to know that we can be open and honest with you about what will and will not work, so that we can all know that we're working together. And I think sometimes in these service-based relationships, there is almost this weird like adversarial push and pull between like, I'm the client, I'm the person who's making it, you're just the client, you're just a service provider. And I think what we really try to do is very quickly meld everyone together into one team who's trying to achieve this very clear objective. And like the only way we can do that is by being very open. So that's kind of how we establish that feedback of that like feedback in the beginning.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Part of being like really authentic and requesting that feedback is allowing the PMs and devs to work together to execute on the feedback from the client and from you. When you're in the sales cycle for a project and you're noticing things about the client or the request or the projects, how are you fielding a team where you can maximize on authenticity and transparency in the project?
Good question. As we both are like, I always go back to like over communication. I always go back to voicing concerns, being upfront about it, level setting, working with radical transparency, abundant honesty, and then also being empathetic about what's going on. We don't want to just bulldoze people through choices. We want to make sure the choices are intentional. Our job that people hire us for is to do it efficiently. And because we know how to get this information out of people, we're able to move pretty quickly. But in putting into practice and putting into action to allow that authenticity to show through, it's really by creating a process that has milestones, checkpoints, sign-offs, all that stuff that, you put up these guardrails, and I talk about this ad nauseum, but like people love lanes. People love knowing what's coming down the pipeline because it makes us feel really secure. It makes us feel like we're in good hands. And one of the whole reasons we created this process was because there wasn't enough transparency in how we were working with web design. And so we were like, well, I wonder if I knew a little bit more information, I would feel a little bit warm and cozy. And then also equipped with information allows me to show up a little bit more creatively, a little bit more in a dynamic problem solving mindset. And so, by having these lanes and having these areas that we kind of set up boundaries, we're able to work really creatively and show up in a way that wasn't necessarily always the case.
Yeah. And I think in the like sales process, kind of like before we even get into building sites, we'll talk to clients, we'll hear about the project. A big part of that is kind of trying to soak up as much of their energy and their like who they are going to be as clients, who's going to be involved in the project. And then, we have a really like good slate of team members from a project management and a dev team side. And we then kind of do this little like personality, skill set, availability, alchemy, like matching, where, I think Katie and I, who do most of our like business development and sales, we have a feel for, okay, this project manager really excels with this type of project, this developer needs to work with one of these project managers because of just how their personalities mesh. And I feel like we're always like testing out different combinations of people, and we'll be like, oh, that worked really well. Like those two vibed, you know, they really like got each other. And so I think that's like one of the hardest things to sometimes explain to clients and even team members is we want to be as open and transparent about every decision that we make as possible. But sometimes there's like these ineffable qualities that, other than availability, I can't always tell you why we're going to choose a specific project manager and a specific developer for the project, other than that their past work and their current availability, their current slate of work, and what we think they would be able to create for the client work really, really well together. And that is something that just like knowing our team really well and learning a lot about them and trying to be really like actively involved with both sides of that team makes it easier and easier to make those choices.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. There's a lot of things about the process itself that makes transparency happen, but there are also some sort of really concrete and actionable things that you two do as part of the business to provide information and resources, not only to your community, but also to your clients and also your employees. Two of the things that I'd love to touch on, the first is the training portal. I think giving clients sort of a secret sauce of like, how do you make this sustainable? Like being really transparent with, you know, giving them the keys so that, you know, some mentors or like business owners would say, well, you're cutting yourself off at the knee. They could, you know, sign up for a subscription with you, while some other people might say, wow, it's just like a really transparent choice. And then the other thing that I think is really interesting, and we don't have to go into all the ways this is happening, but you do a fair amount of automation on Slack and a fair amount of automation, like technical automation that happens in order to keep everyone on the same page and keep all of the information that's flowing in front of the right people. So let's talk about the training portal first.
I think that sometimes really creative people, there's some amount of like laziness that comes into play in their innovation. Mal and I, from the beginning, you know, one of the reasons we chose to build client sites on Squarespace is because it really sits at this intersection of, you know, being highly customizable while also being very user-friendly. And so it's always been a very core tenet of ours is that we want to build websites that people can use. I probably annoy everyone who has to overhear my sales calls because I usually say, we're not here to build you a billboard that you have to pay us to change every time you want to, you know, swap something out. We want to build you a toolbox that can be used as a part of your work. And so for us, having the training portal really helps empower our clients to use the tools that we are helping them build. I will say, being completely transparent, doing support work is very time consuming. For us to like talk to a client, get the assets, make the change, get their approval, send them a bill, get paid, track, I mean, it's just like the juice is rarely worth the squeeze. And so it's not something that we have focused on as a really significant part of our business over the years, because we view it more as a service that we offer to folks who are truly like very busy and just can't make it happen on their own, knowing that 90% of the time people are capable of making the changes that they want to make. And so we want to empower them to do that. So I guess in the spirit of true innovation, part of it definitely comes from laziness of just like, I don't want to make money changing pictures out for people. There's other work that we feel more called to. But I will say that, you know, Mal and I have always felt really passionate about helping people use these websites. Like I'm in the middle of writing a book about how folks can use Squarespace. Over the years, we have given talks about building your own. We are always happy to show up at anyone's like, you know, networking or whatever event to give people a walkthrough of the platform, because I think what we do is not magic. What we do is not particularly special when it comes to using this tool. It was a DIY platform. The goal is for people to be able to build their own websites. we are kind of a weird byproduct of that, where people are like, this system is cool, but I also have other things to do. So I don't want to learn how to build a website. And I think bringing that humility to it of just like, I'm not going to gatekeep a platform I didn't build. And so we want to figure out more and more ways to continue passing that knowledge along, knowing that the person who's going to build their own website isn't necessarily going to be the week of the website client that time, right? Maybe website 2 when they're too busy. But I think that's like a big part of the portal and why it exists and what it is.
Mm-hmm. And then Mal, I feel like a little bit like you're sort of the automation queen. I'm not sure why. I just feel like you talk about automation a little bit, and you've also, I think, maybe put some cool automation in Slack. What can you talk a little bit about the information that like gets dumped when a project passes like the sales finish line?
Yeah, I mean, I can't take credit for all because Kelsey is really the one who seeks out all of the systems and puts into place plenty of Zaps. So we use Zapier for like, oh my God, everything. But one of our things is we want to be able to cut down as much busy work as possible. And then also keep information really readily available. And so when things go from the sales process into being an actual project, a lot of stuff gets triggered in the process. So when a client signs a project, we get a Slack channel that opens up, automatically invites us, and then starts spewing forward the information that we had on our intake call. So our team starts getting onboarded as we are onboarding the client, and we're all working together to kind of make sure all of the information is in one place, really readily accessible so that everyone has what they need in order to be successful. Outside of that information comes down to, you know, the canned emails we use to send onboarding information to our clients. You know, it's like, not to like we always say like we're going to automate up until the point of there's no human connection, because we want there to be human connection. But what I don't want is our project managers spending a lot of time being like copying and pasting email copy or wondering what they're supposed to be doing or saying next. I just want it to be accessible to them in a way that cuts down on the amount of like in between time. So having a canned email ready where it's like, boom, and now I just have to fill in the information that is relative to this client so we can get them onboarded and we can onboard everyone in a really consistent way. Because that's the other thing, is that automation also helps solve for human error. And we definitely have things in our work day to day that there's a high potential for human error because there's a lot of information going back and forth constantly. So the more that we can automate that and just bring that information to us in a way that just meets us where we are, not have to think so hard, not have to like type out too much, just inevitably helps things move a lot more smoothly.
I like to think of myself as the Beaker to Mallory's Bunsen when it comes to setting these up, because I feel like usually it'll start with like a, you know, we've got X thing and we've got Y thing. How can we make them do Z thing so we don't have to do Z thing? And then I'll go in and be like,
she's like, I could set up a Zap for that. And I'm like, let's do it.
I set one up last week that's so not right. I like looked at the Airtable the other day and I was like, oh yeah, that's not working. But I think it is, you know, it helps us be a little bigger than we are, because we didn't have an assistant until 4 months ago. And even then we were like, I don't know, it'll just be for this and that for the, like, she's changed our lives. She's amazing. We were dummies. We should have hired her 100 years ago. But I think
shout out to Sam. She's awesome.
Shout out to Sam. I
yeah,
mean,
Sam is literally listening to us talk right
greatest.
now on this.
Sam Gong,
Sam,
thank you.
Yeah, I mean, Sam is like, before Sam, it was all like, okay, how can we get this and this to ping us and remind us? And I think Mal has always made a really good point of, we have a very efficient process. It has to be efficient and automated to the point where it can still be human, and anything beyond that is too far. But there's, you know, so much you can do with like the resources that we have. I also, to this day, do not know if it's Zapier or Zapier. And last night I decided that that is going to be my New Year's resolution, is to find out how it's pronounced. Don't tell me until after January 1st, but that's my resolution.
Okay, because I thought it was Zapier, because someone corrected me when I said Zapier, and someone was like,
Me
"You mean
too.
Zapier?" And I was like, "Potato, potato. Who cares? We all know what we're talking about."
Yes, Mallory, I have had the same
Semantic.
scenario. Openness. We don't know how to pronounce the name of this tool we've been using for 9 years.
That's amazing. Amazing. So we've covered a lot of ground. We've talked about authenticity and transparency and some actionable things that you do in your business to benefit your communities and clients and the contractors that work for you. I'd like to end sort of by wrapping up, and, if each of you have one or two tips for either an employee at a company or other business owners about how to promote transparency and authenticity within your business spaces.
I thought you were going to ask us to say like a deep, dark secret.
I mean,
this could be a deep, dark secret.
Could be deep and dark.
Promoting transparency and openness.
Yeah.
To
I mean, for
me,
me, no, go ahead.
I have
sorry, Kels. It comes in the form of, I've noted this, I could be wrong, right? I'm open to being wrong here, but I feel like my responsibility as a business owner, as a team leader, is to remind people as much as possible that there is room for humanity, room for space, that there's room for feedback, for not wanting to do something. It's really easy to get swept away in this world, put on your big girl pants. And I do think that I'm not going to say that there's not a time and place for it. Like, anyone who ever works for me knows that I'm the queen of strapping on big girl pants and just getting the job done. Because that's the way that I work in this world. It works for me, but I have a responsibility to my team and to my team's headspace to make it as well known as possible in every conversation, especially when I know I'm pushing people really hard. Like, for example, like in the marketing team right now, like I know I'm pushing people really hard, but it also just comes that like, it should not come at a price. Like, as soon as it becomes too much, I want someone to tell me. I want to keep that conversation open. And so it comes in the form for me of just reminding people the door is open. And I hate saying that because it seems cheesy, but it's like, ask anyone who has ever given me pushback on like a deadline. I'll be like, okay, like, you're not going to hear shit from me about needing to push a deadline if it makes sense and we're still getting the job done. Of course, deadlines can be somewhat arbitrary, but also I'm the one that has to set them somehow because I got to keep us on track. But it's like, there's space for it all to be. Kel, sorry, you go.
No. I think we, as always, Mallory, complement each other beautifully, because I think as a continuation of that, in addition to making sure people know that the door is open, I think one of the things on the kind of developer and like project side that we really try to do is create proactive space for multi-directional feedback. So like, as an example, if we have a project that for whatever reason doesn't go the way that we want it to, usually before the project is even launched, we as a team will set a like half-hour post-mortem conversation to really just talk through the process and ask every person who was involved in that process how it went from their perspective. What do we think we could do differently? And like, that's not a dev PM and then Mal and I are like looking in. That is a dev, a PM, sales team. We're reviewing kind of the 360 of how that happened. So like, what did the client tell us when they came in? What did we communicate to the team? How did they get onboarded? How did the process go?
Right.
How was the launch? How was offboarding? And giving everyone, not just giving everyone the opportunity to give their feedback, but asking people proactively, like, developer, from your perspective, what do you think needed to happen in order for this portion of this to be more successful? And I think it's very, very difficult to create a like truly flat environment from a hierarchical perspective, just because like the reality is someone writes the paychecks and someone gets them received, right? But I think from that feedback perspective, it's so important that we level those conversations as often as we can, and get very deliberate when we ask for feedback. And then I think the big thing is like when you receive that feedback, you have to tell people, you have to show people that you're hearing it and you're going to do something about it, because otherwise they're going to pick up on the fact that you're just listening to them to make them feel better, but not actually do something about it. And I think what happens after that feedback is just as important as when you receive it.
Right. And like, you know, you talk about feedback and it feels like, especially in these postmortems, it's always like Kelsey saying, like trying to level set it as much as possible, because there are moments when we are just as culpable as anyone else. And so this is not about pointing a finger, because just as many times as a dev or PM has had to take hard feedback, we have also taken feedback and made adjustments to the way we work. Like it works both ways. We cannot operate successfully in a vacuum. I always like, a great example is our editor came to me and was like, how much of this do you want me to push on with this thought leadership piece? And I'm like, I want you to push me hard, because I cannot be operating in a vacuum. If you're sitting here telling me everything I want to hear, that's great. It makes me feel really good. But at the end of the day, it doesn't make us any stronger. It doesn't make me a better writer. Like it doesn't do us any favors. And I do not want to be that type of business owner where I'm just like, I'm doing great. Like, I'm not going to be Elon Musk. We're not sitting here just being like, okay, like I'm great. Every idea I have is great. Because sometimes our ideas fall flat. I'm like, yeah, just hold me accountable, because, you know, it works two ways, and I'm not perfect.
I think you're perfect.
I love you. I think you're perfect too.
To me, you are perfect.
To me, you are perfect. This is how we truly are.
I love it.
You find it hard to believe, but you know, 10 plus years of a relationship, you really dig deep, and I don't know.
I came back to my desk yesterday to this very sweet note from Mallory, and it just, you know, it made me want to be more open about my feelings. So
now you have to read it, because people are not going to get the last line. And it's a nice note.
I love you. Don't second guess yourself. Your value is underappreciated. Never forget, you are a powerful dump truck.
The backstory is that Kelsey's son has a toy that sings a song. It's a dump truck, and it sings a song, and it goes, I'm a powerful dump truck. I always mess up the second
Taking
line.
my load from here
to there. And it's so funny, because I'm like, we are all powerful dump trucks taking our load from here to there. Every time I hear it sing as I'm putting toys away, I'll just cry laughing and be like, whoever came up with this song like was really just digging deep on a metaphor for life.
Yeah. One time I called Mal and I sang it to her, or I didn't call it, I sent her a voice note singing it to her in the style of Phoebe Bridgers.
Now in the style of Phoebe Bridgers.
Yes. Anyway. Thank you for leading this conversation again. It's always really special to get to talk about this. And I think it's fun because you're at the point where you're like enmeshed in the team, but you're also new enough that you're still getting to learn things about, like, the ancient history is new to you. So it's really nice to have someone listen to grandmas tell their old tales.
No, I have so much fun, and during these, I'm just really glad that we can talk like this together.
So next,
how can people?
Yeah, do you want me to I got this teed up. Y'all, you can subscribe to this where you get your podcast. You can also watch this delightfulness on YouTube. Our website is www.weekofthewebsite.com. You can follow us on Instagram as well at Week of the Website.
And next
Oh,
time,
and next week,
Next
we're going to be
time.
talking about trustworthiness. I was going to say last value, but it's not our last value, our second to last value. So
It's going to be great.
find out next week on how trustworthy we really are.
what if next week we put up a totally different topic as like a real meta joke for anyone who listened to this outro, and like the joke is that we are not trustworthy because we told you it was going to be about trustworthiness.
There you go.
Exactly.
Awesome. I'll talk to you guys later.
All right.
All right, bye,
Bye,
guys.
everyone.